call this special meeting of the Southbury Planning Commission to order. We can stand the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Let's see. Seeing an alternate, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't need to see anyone or 5 of us. We're good. All right, we're all full members. Good. Greg's been moved up, everyone knows, to full member as of last month. All right. New business, POCD survey questions. Everybody should have them from the original. We have the folks from Malone and McBroom with us tonight. Everybody is familiar with that. So the goal of tonight is to talk with them about survey questions. And I'm going to pass the buck to you guys in a second. And we need to go through the questions and decide what's feasible for the whole book. What we've used in the past, a lot of them are probably still good, some are not. A lot has changed, right, in the world in the last 10 years, and going forward in the next 10, I'm sure it'll change with, the EV market, with cars and all that. We have to think about what's different going forward. So we have to think about how to change things in the whole program. So we're going to go through these tonight, and then come up with additional ones or deletions, and kind of go from there. Everybody good with that? Okay.
We have a little bit more than that.
Yes, that's the skinny of it.
Well,
So,
thanks
I'll
for
pass the
having
buck.
us.
You guys?
I'm Vince McDermott. I'm the temporary fill-in for my
For Patrick.
colleague Pat Gallagher,
Yep,
who will be the project manager for this. And
Yep.
with me is Liz Esposito, who will be actively involved. And the third person actively involved will be Robert Collins, who is new to us, but has extensive experience in comprehensive plans, essentially what this is. Pat Gallagher his wife had a baby on Friday, and so he'll be out on paternity leave first, and so I'm filling in for tonight. So in addition to the survey questions that we'd like to talk about, we also need to talk about how you would like to structure focus groups. We need to begin to think about those things. We need to talk about the timing of the survey. When does it get launched? And then there's also a thing we call Immersion Day. And Immersion Day is the opportunity for town staff and leadership to tell us and talk about their operations and what are their concerns. For example, your Park and Recreation Director, I'm just making that up, needs to weigh in as to what are they focusing on, what is his group. And even the chairman of that commission would be helpful on those days. So we need to think about doing those things early on at the same time that the survey work is being undertaken. So that's the big picture. And then we need to talk about, no decision, but you need to begin to talk about the community workshops, which would probably be down after the election time. I think it's prudent to let that pass, and whoever might be new, and it really gets people focused on it. So that's sort of the direction we're going. The survey that Jessica just handed out is great. The questions are, here, how important are they? How many of these do you want to keep? And how many are there other topics that you would like to have evaluated? The advantage of starting with this as a base will give us and you the opportunity to compare to see if there have been changes in the community attitude over the past decade. The other thing that, again, we don't need you to answer, but to begin to think about, the focus groups are on topics. I'll throw one out from the last time round, and it's near and dear to my heart, and that's a great deal of emphasis on your last plan, focused on the aquifer protection and the water supply for the town. At the time, you will recall, that's when Twanik was a hot potato, and we were concerned, and you were concerned, about the withdrawal, and so that was a focus. That may not be the focus any longer. I know, I'm pretty familiar with Southbury. um, I was looking up some stuff in here, catching up, and I noticed the plan for Main Street, which Bob Bryant did in 1974-75. I did that plan with Bob. So there's a little history here. So what are the hot potato items? In the past 10 years, you've looked at Southbury Training School. We looked at the physical features. You did the plan. What about Main Street? Does it need to be looked at again? You've got a great Main Street. I know you've spent a lot of effort on lighting and streetscape and so on. What about the businesses? I'm throwing those out with no judgment, but you know your town better than anyone. And what are the hot button issues that you need or would like to focus on as part of the POCD focus groups? Liz, did you want to add anything?
I think that covers it really well. The only thing I would just jump on is looking at how your questions are grouped. I think the themes that you have really do cover the breadth of what a POCD is going to look at. But is there any opportunity that we can go into more detail in a survey, and what is more appropriate for a focus group where you have a moderator versus what is more appropriate to have kind of online or in paper, maybe a little bit more self-driven. So that's something to consider as well.
So that's where we are. That's the introduction. And you all know that this takes time and effort and thoughtfulness. And let's hope that we get it right the first time. I know the last time around, there were some issues that took a little refinement in the end. I'm looking at you, Nancy, because I remember you were here. That they took a little pushing to get the end product. We were not involved, but we were involved on the outside.
I was able to locate from the 2011, 2012, the questionnaires that went out to all the department heads and various commissions. So we could look at that and see what we like about that and
Sure.
rework that when the time comes. I can email it to everybody. I wasn't sure that this was what we'd be even covering
We don't need to
tonight.
cover that tonight.
Okay.
That's more for you to tell us and identify who the participants
Yeah,
should be.
there's actually a
And
whole
that really gets
list.
at, to a
So
large
that-
extent, to the town administration as well. Who are the right people to be there?
Yeah, and I'd also, I think on that front, since 2011, you look at our key departments that are here, that are involved, new public works director, new parks and rec director, new senior services director, new economic development director.
New finance director?
New finance director, so it'll be interesting to see different perspectives that they may or may not bring
Yeah, right.
to the table based on this. So.
Right.
Is there, you said actually have them come in and talk, which,
We talk with them.
that's great. But is there a cutoff? I mean, are you gonna
That's a
go
good
in and talk to every single department head?
We will set up a day, and they'll come in,
Okay, good.
into this room or whatever room Jessica assigns, and they will be expected to, be prepared to,
And we can attend those.
oh, yeah, yes.
You're good.
And,
There's plenty of room.
it's sort of like a data dump. What's on your mind, what's important, what needs to get addressed as part of this thing. And then we synthesize that and bring it back, so you're certainly welcome. I don't know if any of you have the compunction to sit down for a day. It's a very busy day.
Okay.
So again, that's something that you don't need to answer tonight.
Yep.
And we'll look to you for direction and try to set that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
In very early September, probably right after Labor Day. Presumably staff are not involved in political stuff, so that schedule is not determined by the political season.
Got it. All right.
When do you want our our input? Is there a time on this?
Do what? As soon as you can get it to us. We were, quite frankly, not expecting that you would do it all tonight, but since it's on the agenda,
The survey.
yeah, let's have at it.
Yeah, we plan on going through as much as we
Sure,
can.
sure.
To get this,
Yes,
done, add
thank you.
additions, whatever it may,
I'm sorry.
and then try to get it set so that we can
Here,
get the
take
survey
this
ready to
stuff.
go, obviously.
Yeah, yeah,
Because this has to be out prior to, the meetings coming up, right?
Yep.
So we wanna
yeah, yeah.
keep the
Yeah,
timeline
let's
on.
keep it moving.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, where do we start?
I think we got a couple too, I don't know if we did receive those Woodbury's questionnaire, so that we had, in case we missed something, we could add something, did we get that?
No, I never got Woodbury's.
Okay, I thought I sent it to you, okay, so that we could, sometimes we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but there's some.
Some pieces?
That we didn't look at.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, you have other ones that you can.
Yes, I brought a couple of other surveys that we've done.
Woodbury and Kent, I think, were the two that have just been completed.
Yeah. I have Bethel with me here tonight because that was one of the more robust ones that we've done that has a different variety of question types to compare with. So for them, they had a large focus on parks and recreation, and asking, are there enough playing fields, ball fields, different types of recreational opportunities, that I think that can slot really nicely, into your community facilities or open space sections. It's the similar style, if that's of interest. They also asked about their Route 6 corridor in town as an economic development focus area. So asking questions about what land uses they would like to see when that corridor is developed. So if there are special areas in town that you'd like to highlight in this survey, this is a great opportunity for that.
So I think we'd like to see as many of these in there, but also additions to it to flesh it out.
Do we have to be concerned about making the survey too long, though? I don't wanna turn
Yes, you do.
something off.
Yeah, that is a good point. With this checkbox style that you have going throughout, it makes it very quick. So if we can keep it like that rather than a long form answer, people are more likely to stick with it, and go to the end. So I think the question style, more than the number of questions, is really that determination.
Yeah, that, and I wanna make sure that we're very open-ended. I don't wanna guide it, so to speak.
Right, right,
It really has to be the input of the public, the residents of the town.
right, right.
Absolutely. So is there anything that's jumping out to you, just with a quick overview of the past survey, as something that's a whole, something that you'd like to ask about that isn't represented here?
I think the community center building seems to be a topic that comes up a lot. And that can't be, maybe not limited to just the building. I mean, there's pool issues, there's
Really?
courts, fields. Pool is a hot topic right now, too.
Yeah, I know.
I was thinking the same thing, and I was also thinking about, lighting for athletic fields has long been, in my 12 years here, has long been an issue.
Yeah.
That parents and, kids with younger parents in the sports leagues.
Yeah, I know.
I think
Even
another
though
one,
asking to pay for it.
I don't know how much we wanna drill down into it, but we've had some lofty goals for open space. I think we've
The
done.
20 to 25%.
Well, it seems to be, depending on what piece
Definition.
of paper we have,
Yeah,
it seems to be a floating figure. I'd like to, possibly ask the public about that, like, when is enough enough?
Yeah.
but even before you get when is enough, and this might be getting off the topic, what do you mean by it?
Yeah.
Do people
We need a
understand what?
definition.
I know that that's been a hot topic, and when I was reviewing this, I'm saying, what do they mean by open space?
Right, and we don't
Perception-
even have a decent definition. I mean,
Right.
Right,
I've heard that in some cases, we've actually counted cemeteries as open space. Is that true? I don't know.
Golf
You know?
course, golf courses.
Golf courses.
yes, you do,
It,
you do.
there's two different examples of it in the POCD.
Yeah, and
So
I was
yeah.
confused by, what are you driving
And
at?
do the residents of town consider a golf course or a cemetery, do they consider that open space? It's not something, yes, you can recreate on a golf course if you play golf, but it's not like you can sit down in the middle of a fairway and have your
cemetery.
environmental issues.
Or cemetery, yeah.
You know, so I'd really like to kind of get some definitions to that. And I'm not saying we need to be bigger, and I'm not saying we need to be smaller. I just,
I
It
think
needs
if
to have
we're,
parameters.
and I'd like definitions.
Well,
Yeah.
Council of Governments spent a year on refining their definition. Maybe we can get some input from them too.
I know,
Well, but certainly in this question, you know, it says undeveloped land as open space, right?
That's
Which,
not true.
well, I mean, different from how we're counting open space, we're asking people if they want undeveloped land as open space. So, I mean, that's very different than a golf course, but if we're asking too about golf courses, then that needs to be incorporated in the questions as well.
so I think,
Undeveloped land can change the day after.
But the question is, right, do more to preserve undeveloped land as open space. So that would give us some indication if people want more undeveloped land.
so I think we need to, when we get to that question, or developing that question, I think we have to perhaps refine it and ask it in a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
To me, being a park and recreation person, in many respects, open space to me is land that is preserved, it may be active or passive, and open to the public. All right? Yes, having the golf courses along the river from an open space, not the environmental, that's a different issue, does do something in terms of the character and perception of the town.
yes, it does, absolutely.
And it's important, those are important components. But equally important is the greenway going up the Pump Rock, you know, the Mark Taylor Greenway. So, and that gets to the preservation of wild, open lands or undeveloped lands versus actively used open space. So I don't know how we would qualify that, but I think we need to get at that question.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and something we can definitely drill into. I think a great addition to this would also be a prioritization question, to say, if the town's going to preserve open space, what kind of open space should they prioritize? Active recreation, wild lands, and give different categories and examples, and throw golf courses and cemeteries in there just to give that third rail answer and see how it comes out. I think that one could reveal a lot of great information. Yeah.
Something that always troubles me, and I don't know if we can put it in this, is how we acquire open space.
Ah,
You know, I'm a developer, and I got a rotten piece of land over here, okay? I'm gonna give that to the town as open space, and I'm sure that happens.
oh, that,
And I don't know if you can fit that into a question or not.
well, you're faced with that every time you've got a subdivision because
yeah,
you
of
have a dedication requirement, and what do you
I
get?
put that question to the first selectman, you were at that meeting where I
Yeah,
did that.
and
You guys had asked me to.
Yeah.
You know, because it came up in a meeting earlier in the year.
We wind up with these little, I call them
Yeah.
pocket parks.
islands,
They're not even parks though, they're just
No.
little tiny,
Tot lots.
you know, 4
No,
lots
not
here.
not even
They're
that.
just abandoned lots, essentially.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
that's exactly what they are.
I think, we have other definitions that we can incorporate though. Nature Conservancy does one and they have 27 different, does it abut another parcel of open space? And if it's the town or the land trust, is it abut on a land trust property or a town property? You know, is it accessible to the public? Has there been an environmental assessment to see if there was dumping there? There's hazardous waste, there are all kinds of ways you can qualify it, so that it's not a burden to the town, it's not our liability.
But I think that question that you're asking there is not necessarily for the questionnaire, but that's a policy question
Yeah.
Yes.
Policy
that we get to further on, when we're at the question of open space.
That's,
Because when you're acquiring it under your subdivision, you can take it by fee, or you can take it by conservation restriction, I think.
easement, yeah.
And, and what does that do for you, other than preserve some land perhaps? So that's a policy question that I don't think you're gonna get to in the survey, but I think trying to define what we're talking about as open space seems to be something that we'll have to go after. Yeah.
Okay.
changes from the state on the use of the word character
Yeah.
in zoning. Have you found that you're asking questions differently? Because we have the do more to preserve rural character, and do we want to
Yes.
move away from, is that a,
So I think we just explain it better. Character isn't as descriptive to someone who isn't familiar or as familiar with the community. So if we can just talk about it more in depth, we can still ask a similar question in the same vein, just more specific.
Because I know that applies to zoning things, and it applies to affordable housing and such. You can't base your decisions on preserving the character of the community.
But yet you do have character that through other elements that you may want to preserve.
So it can't just be character as a blanket
I
statement.
know, but you can't
You-
use character as.
As a reason for denial of a zone
Doing
change.
something,
Right.
as in here, a couple
Yeah.
of pages I got in here, talked about the character, preserving the character of the town of Southbury. And you can't put that in the document, I don't think.
Well, I think
Well,
you
it's
can
just
put
not-
it in the POCD,
just not useful?
and you just have to be careful on how you use it and apply it in your zoning standards. And so I think you're okay, and nobody's saying you can't talk about character.
Right, it's more like stating a fact, like a mission there, kind of that
Can't be
character of the town.
Yeah.
Or like you stated earlier, it can't be a reason for denial,
Right,
No,
but it can be used in the POCD to describe,
Who you are,
yeah,
what you are.
right.
Guidance, yeah.
yep,
In the whole residential development section, certainly looking for input from the public, absolutely, but we're also gonna be pretty directed with the affordable housing, and that's the,
yeah.
you know, the hot topic. So
Mhm.
how do we navigate through that, where a lot of it's dictated to us, so it doesn't really matter. You
Yeah.
know, if the town says, well, you know, hey, we don't need more affordable housing, well, sorry, you're
You're
getting it,
gonna get it.
Yeah.
you know?
So I know affordable housing has become kind of a boogeyman for some folks. So we approach it as housing diversity, so expanding the different types of housing, whether it's deed restricted or not. And we can kind of get a temperature on how the community feels about duplexes versus ADUs,
Yeah.
versus a cottage court, so different forms of housing. And if affordable housing is then applied to that, that will come a little further down the line.
And I think they tried to start getting to that
Yeah.
with the cluster housing question as the second one, and that clearly, I think, because that is another form of,
Not real popular with
Menu.
developers for some reason.
Well,
You
it's
got
just-
a win over on corner of 172 and 67.
Yeah, and it.
yeah, you
it
got a
should-
few units out of that.
It's popular with, actually, it's cheaper to develop. when-
Yes.
You know, when they have cluster housing, and that's what we need to show, push, yeah.
The problem is something we can't resolve, it's the deed restriction. I mean, we have, believe it or not, we have affordable housing in town, okay? It's just that nobody's gonna put, affordable housing statement out and say it's gonna be there for 40 years. That's basically the problem I see.
Coming back to the cluster housing issue and why it isn't popular, the developer can't get the density using the formulas that you have when I say you and many other towns have the same formula that you have in your regulations. That just doesn't, it isn't worth it to them, because in order to really get the cottage housing or something like that, you need to have infrastructure, and you don't have, public infrastructure, you have public water to some extent, limited. You got about that much remaining, that isn't committed.
And traditions.
What?
Traditions, yes.
And traditions, and so you have to think about there are other possibilities of doing those. Liz and I are working in Weston at the moment, and we're writing regulations for them to allow some affordable, believe it or not, Weston affordable. I mean, you can't talk about that, right? Sorry. But how do you get the density? And when you ask that question, policy-wise, are you prepared to allow community systems? Which you don't
Yes.
have, do you have any community systems?
Well, not
Oh, not
community, we just
community,
put in
no.
like a mini sewer system.
Where?
What do you call that thing that they
It
put in?
is.
Where,
it's-
Southbury Green?
Yeah.
They put it in
it's-
themselves, they spent.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
they
because
pulled
that,
their money
That's
into
what I'm saying.
Surrey.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
did it, that's how they were able to have Lucas Local and
Right.
the rest, they put it for
That's it,
restaurants.
yeah, so you can do that.
Yep, I'm telling you,
but
Kevin Gilman.
that was a retro, right? Didn't they had a problem there, I think, isn't that why they
I
did
don't
it?
think they had a problem. I think, like you said, they wanted
No.
No, they made an
restaurants.
investment. I mean,
Made an investment.
both they were and where Stop and Shop were, have historically had septic issues.
Yeah.
It's
Even
been
with
on the
what they
docket
had.
For years, we're
Yeah,
talking about
and
upsizing it, the size of it.
the
clean-
new
I mean,
owners
name
of
it.
Southbury Green saw an opportunity.
Okay.
Saw it as opportunity and made up, like, it was like a $3 million
Yeah,
plus.
so
investment.
that's the sort of thing, but the policy that goes along with that is that your water pollution control authority, do you have one?
Yeah,
I
but
think you
it
do.
doesn't
It's, what, it's,
It exists.
it exists.
It exists.
Has
in
to
theory.
agree to allow that and to, in the event of failure, manage it. So that's a policy question that if you're going to get higher densities that can support good clusters,
Yeah.
you're gonna need to look at those sorts of things.
And to Ron's question about kind of incentivizing actually getting the deed restricted units, I don't know if that might be too in the weeds for the general public on this kind of self-driven survey, but, looking at affordable housing more broadly may be a good bridge for those focus groups and talking about the different kinds of policies that are available for Southbury. I think that we could put that on the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a separate
Yeah,
company, as a
yeah.
matter of fact,
Yeah.
a separate group looking into affordable housing, which I'm assuming will be sort of an addendum.
Well, yeah, you've asked it to be separate, but it will be,
Separate.
the data that we're working on
The plan was for,
It has to
is
be separate
applicable
from
to it.
state.
the
It has
plan
to be
was for
separate
affordable
from
housing
state,
to be
but it doesn't have
mentioned
to
in
be
here,
separate
right?
from
Correct.
this.
No,
Yeah.
no.
It could be an addendum or
But that's a
index
separate
to-
survey.
to
Yeah,
the POCD.
Yes.
that's a whole separate survey, whole
No.
separate book,
Yeah,
whole
it doesn't
separate
go-
section.
doesn't go with
Right.
this.
We'll mention it in here, but that's a whole separate book.
But I thought there was actually, I thought somebody presented saying that we should incorporate
Yes,
parts
Yes.
of our affordable housing
It
into
will
our
be.
plan of
yeah,
conservation
yeah.
and
There's
development
there is a definite
to be
link.
able to
Yes.
enforce
The-
it. So
the-
that's,
Yeah.
I think, what Ron's talking about, not the whole plan
Right.
being a part, but the,
Yeah, there'll be a section mentioned it, but the whole affordable housing plan won't be part of
No,
this
I
book.
don't think,
No.
I think it's too lengthy to be.
It's
Yeah.
too big.
but.
It has to be a separate document
But the
anyway.
tenets of it need to be
The- the-
incorporated.
It's updated at different times.
You can,
They
the
can
plan
do it.
itself may
Yeah.
be big, okay, but you can boil it down and you can put it in here so that it has power as opposed to being a separate.
They are definitely linked,
Right.
all three
Yeah,
of these.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Every
Right,
town in
I
the state
believe-
is dealing with it.
I believe
Yeah.
it will be referenced in here, and parts of it will be in here, but you have to keep in mind too, the affordable housing plan is supposed to be updated every 5 years, where this is every 10.
And or whenever the state decides to change their.
Right.
Well, that's true too, yeah.
So you don't wanna be forced to change your POCD just
Right.
because
Right,
they're
so
affordable
they
housing.
won't be integrated documents. However, to Ron's point, having your implementation plan for your POCD mirror your goals of your AHP is, I think, is very
I
important.
think that
so they're
makes a
not
lot
in
of sense.
conflict.
I like that.
So.
Exactly, that's what we
Yeah.
mentioned, that's right.
One
Yeah.
thing the public,
Well
that
put.
I hope we get out in the information is that whenever there's affordable housing, Salisbury residents are not prioritized. And people think that, oh, we're gonna have our kids move back into town, they're
Yeah.
gonna work in town. No, they're not prioritized at all, ever.
Yeah, it's an open market system
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Can you put this
Yeah,
closer to
naturally
Nancy? I wanna make sure.
naturally occurring.
So when we ask about that, maybe, I don't know why it's not
Well, there's-
generally known.
There's where the whole affordable housing idea is couched in a lot of other things. Okay, people think the same thing, affordable housing is associated with
I know.
Low income.
Section 8, that's what
Yeah.
they think it is.
affordable housing. People think you gotta build a multi-story unit to, accommodate the numbers that the state wants you to accommodate. All of those things are not necessary. And I know when we have, the general public
But Grace Meadows is an affordable housing.
Right, so that,
No, it's not.
that is why we put the
Where
emphasis
isn't
on
it?
the diversity.
You can't count Grace Meadows as
No, it doesn't
affordable housing.
qualify, it's a
No,
senior housing.
because it's senior housing
And it's structured.
financed by the federal government. I know, I did the thing on affordable housing.
But elements of the new one that they're looking to, of Pierce Hollow would be,
Yes.
elements of it, not the entire.
It is.
The one up on the hill.
Pierce Hollow that they're looking
Well,
to,
First Hollow, when they.
that,
did
yeah, a portion of it
What
will
they
be.
wanna add to this, or.
If they do.
Something it's
Right,
not
if they
Because
do.
one of the things holding them up is they wanted to make it senior
Right,
housing.
and they couldn't get the grant money for
State
it.
mandated, said you're not getting money.
Anyway,
Alright, let's stay on point on this, guys.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I'm just, I don't wanna chime in too much, but just a couple, two things, and then I'm gonna shut up because it's your meeting. On the residential area, but also on business, it sort of goes to residential and economic development. I think one of the things that I've heard from residents over my 6 years on the Board of Selectmen is there are no blight ordinances in our town. There are no blight ordinances in our town, and I think something in the POCD in particular should address the interest, to quantify whether there is interest in putting that into code, essentially. Because there is nothing in our ordinances about blight.
It is in our regulations.
But I've been up and down this. I worked for a community improvement nonprofit for 5 years, and we have no meaningful
Yep.
blight ordinances in this town.
I didn't think you had any blight in
Yeah.
Southbury.
According to some of the rest.
And how to define it and all that stuff. So I just think something on blight in that world, and I'm sure other towns have done it. And then the other just broad category that I think is missing from this, and I think part of it is because it's, from 10 years ago, it's touched on in areas, but I think it needs to be more explicit, is climate change. We talk about energy with solar, wind, but, Rick, you talked about, are we gonna need to put in charging stations for cars?
Oh, sure.
But climate change, less than that, which is more the solar energy, et cetera. But I think climate change, especially in our town, with the rivers having gone through the tornado, a couple of years back, with an increase in, sort of more violent storms, I think something about climate change here is, it's inherent in, if we're talking about a plan of conservation,
Anything about
and
sustainability.
development, I think something about climate change in here, I don't know what other towns have done to.
Well,
to-
that
to-
falls under the
What about
broader category of,
hazard under energy?
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah, but those aren't,
The-
none of those are really
Definitely be
climate change.
expanded.
Yeah.
yeah.
Some
It-
I
it's
hear
re-
your point. I think from the environmental standpoint, absolutely. We've gotta protect our waters and, our air
Mhm.
quality and all that. But how do you, as a town, start wrapping your arms around, well, we're gonna solve the climate change problem?
Well, that's why I wanna know
It's
what
really,
other
let's
towns-
put it in a
When I think
different
about
sense.
climate change,
Hey.
I would think that we'd wanna understand, to Mike's point, that if we have, a 100-year storm that now becomes a 20-year storm, are the plans, are the flood plans, all the maps that are out there about what we would expect to flood, are they accurate?
Yes,
I mean, to
they,
me-
they actually just got
Am I
updated.
getting Mike your?
Yeah,
And I agree with
Yeah.
all that. That's.
but more than any, for the sort of consulting experts, I wanna have a sense of what other towns might be doing to address it, because I think you're right, Bob. There are certain things where if we can get consistent with other towns, and you're right, our 20,000 person town of Southbury isn't gonna solve climate change. But if the 169 independent fiefdoms that make up the state of Connecticut began working in concert, we could actually make a difference. And more importantly, to Greg's point, we could prepare, and make sure that every single element of the POCD is impacted by climate change, every single element.
So-
And I think we can do an awful lot hitting all the elements,
Yeah.
whether it be emergency planning,
Yeah.
water quality, air quality, any other thing that you can think of. I just caution the town trying to dip their toe into national issues.
I-
That's what I was saying. If we have documents, like, flood plan documents that are showing that, okay, everything that we ever expected is changing, then I think we have something to go on.
Absolutely, I agree with you, 1,000%.
So maybe
I
phrasing
just-
it more as
The state-
resiliency.
The state does the floodplain mapping,
Well, that's what I'm saying, is I don't disagree with Mike's point at all. I just, you know, I think I'm sort of resonating a little bit with what Bob's saying, that as long as we have something that is meaningful for our P O C D, that affects our town directly,
So-
that we can contribute in a meaningful way.
So the
yeah.
title or the broader picture comes under the aegis of resiliency and sustainability.
Yeah,
And, and what you can do as a town on each of those will contribute positively.
yes.
The floodplain maps, Jessica, they've been updated, have they been adopted yet?
I'm not sure if they've been adopted yet. I know,
They were just done.
they were just done by the
So-
emergency.
So, and
management.
FEMA has new standards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so those boundaries, from an implementation point of view, get incorporated into your zoning regulations and your applicability on other development. Things like, low-impact, development standards for stormwater management. That's a positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are
Yeah.
all contributing to water quality.
Yeah.
Right, all the environmental issues.
The
I get it.
percentage of, and this goes down into implementation, but in the percentage of ground area coverage, what is appropriate on a watershed basis, on a sub-watershed basis, and we can get at that farther down. But I think we shouldn't lose sight of those resiliency issues.
Yeah, and forgive me for not remembering, but have you, the town, registered with Sustainable CT?
Yeah, we just did
Yes.
this year.
Oh, fantastic.
This year we
Plus-
became,
Plus, the state has aquifer protection, the state does the floodplain mapping, we have the wetlands regulations, so we're addressing it in so many, like you say, in so many other areas.
But by articulating it, Nancy, in a document like this, you've done that pretty well here.
Yes.
In many respects. I mean, the whole section on water quality.
no
aquifer-
resident reads that.
What?
Very few residents are ever gonna read that.
I know, but-
It's important from a planning perspective,
Yeah.
so that we're keeping
So
that
you're,
in
so
mind.
you're addressing
Yeah,
those issues.
well, my point is, if I was a resident, and I think, you know, and I'll say, I'm not running again, so I have no political skin in this game. I think there are a few issues that are hot topic potentially that would be politicized. Climate change, affordable housing, those are the two hottest probably of them. But if I was a resident and a POCD survey came out and it didn't say the words, in quotes, climate change, somewhere in it about a plan of conservation and development, I'd be like, what the heck is this town doing?
Where do
So
you
there
stop?
needs to, we need to bridge it. What I'm talking about is we need to bridge it in some way to all the points you're making. And I think resiliency and sustainability are sort of,
Where do you stop, Mike?
I don't know, that's why we have consultants here to help us.
So typically
Are
when
we gonna
other-
talk about race issues?
When you,
Are we
when you
gonna talk
get
about-
into, when you get into.
No,
the-
because that's
you
not
get
part of a
into-
plan of conservation.
You get into the meat of what's going on in here.
Can't move
You
into town
see
because
all
of
of
it.
those
It's not.
things
Yeah.
which equal
Yeah.
environment.
Exactly.
You know, we talk about preserving the water, we talk about, how we have to spread out housing to preserve the land, that kind of a deal. It's all already in here.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. And when you ask him the questions, if you say, are you in favor of,
Open space, affordable housing.
Remediating climate change, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
if
too
you
bad.
say,
Yeah.
if you say, our topic is climate change, well, you're gonna turn off a section of the people.
Yeah.
But if you do it the way it was done here, but in the last time, you're talking about the water, you're talking about the land, you're talking about everything.
Absolutely, and that's what we've done with most of our towns. We don't necessarily have a sustainability section that's called out, but
Yeah.
it's woven in through every other
Exactly.
section. Because
Exactly.
it does impact everything, and it is implicitly already in your regulations and in your previous plan. The thing that we have done for towns who would like to call it out a little bit more is in that implementation table that we produce, having a column that says this action qualifies for sustainable CT points, and just having a check mark next to it, so you can see your initiatives that are going toward your sustainable CT certification.
That's
That makes
So that way you aren't necessarily beating people over the head with it,
Yes.
but the folks that are really interested and your committee that's
And-
going
and
for
they
those
can see
points
it.
has the cliff notes to get to each
Yeah.
section and each action.
That's great.
What's the benefit
Um,
I'm not familiar,
So,
sorry.
it's a state-run voluntary program.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, you don't get any money for it, but it's just bragging rights.
Okay.
It's like the
Um,
state, you know, it's
yeah.
different.
Yeah, it's an unfunded, non-mandate.
But it is a great, a quality of your town.
Yeah.
Um,
And it does show you what other towns are doing, so you all can kind of, not necessarily compete with each other, but be aware of what other towns are doing and how to kind of pool your knowledge and build on it. So it does have a lot of benefits, but they're not as concrete as some other programs.
You know what?
I thought Sustainable Connecticut, I thought we did then were more qualified for funding. I thought it was a good,
No, there's no funding.
So if you,
no, not funding for it, but when you're going for other funding, you say,
But that's
oh
bad.
yes, when you're
It's-
applying
it's
to
a
other
real-
grant programs,
real-
It's a
yes,
good thing.
it is a
Yeah.
feather in
Yeah.
your cap. But Sustainable CT does not provide funding on it.
But it's a great marketing tool.
It is.
yeah,
You know, look,
Absolutely.
if you want your town to be your town, you gotta market it.
Sure.
I guess another point, number 40,
Where are you, Nancy?
44. We had a major study for bikeways
I was just thinking the same thing.
in Southbury. Headed along Main Street, there was no route. There are 50, exactly 50, now there'll be 51 curb cuts on Main Street South. Made no sense whatsoever, it's a safety hazard. And they gave us as an example for what it would look like, Cambridge, Massachusetts, for instance. I mean, it did not apply to, but it was not, safety was a big factor. So you may wanna look at our study on bikeway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe we should eliminate that question.
Yeah, let's just
I would eliminate it, yes.
Yeah, we should.
Unless somebody comes in with, you know,
Could we make it softer, like the town should, make efforts to make biking safer, or something like that, so it's not necessarily constructing a protected lane, but,
The town's been hard on this subject for
yeah.
Oh,
years because,
you've gone round and round on it.
yeah, because
Yeah.
that street,
That-
the main road is
exactly.
wicked busy, as you know.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having a bike lane? I just can't imagine it,
Right.
and it's,
Yeah.
But
Well-
I would say it could be a possible question to ask, should the town do more to promote alternative transportation other than single passenger cars or, single cars,
That's a good way to put it.
right? I
Alternative
think
transportation.
that
Well,
And-
that speaks to like buses.
it does,
Yeah.
and it speaks to shuttles, it speaks to
Yeah.
sidewalks, it speaks to all sorts of things.
Right.
And we could break that out, to be more specific, but I think,
My wife is now doing her errands that she can on a bicycle
yeah,
and going down Main Street every day.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I see.
You don't see many, it's hazardous.
However, you have a great sidewalk system.
Yeah.
I often wondered, had it been about 2 feet wider, you would qualify as a bike lane.
You're talking
It would
about
have to be
safety
wider.
again.
It
Gotta be
needs to be, it would,
because you see people with
baby
carriages
prams,
and
the minimum
things like
standard
that.
is 8 feet.
that's a lot.
It's
We don't have that room, I don't
hazard.
think.
Well,
Yeah.
and there are sections that are too
Yeah.
hilly for pedestrian and cyclists going in.
But I often wondered why,
When you go down Main Street and you
you
come
know,
back,
why.
who's gonna carry all their shopping on down Main Street and come back one
Well,
way?
Has everyone
but
seen
but
that
if it
before
was
tonight?
promoted, if it
Yeah, I
was,
think
I mean,
Where a
one
look
of the
Remember, I had it, I
things,
wasn't sure
one of
where
the
it was.
problems the
Yeah.
town has is few people do it,
But I
and so
see
you're
all
not
this stuff
looking
too.
for people on bikes because you only see one every 4 months.
Well, the
and-
recommendation was to do a loop someplace else. You know, the library, Heritage Village, something like that, but not Main Street.
so is that something we should ask about, is maybe different areas of town where things could be improved for
You know-
alternative transportation?
On Sunday morning, if you're driving downtown, you will see people, groups of people on bicycles
All
on Main Street. The widest street we have, I believe, is Main Street South. Now, I agree with you, when school's in, and all the mothers are not putting kids on buses any longer because of the virus, you got that line of traffic that goes from the
Yeah.
school all the way down to the end of it, almost to where the intersection is. But I do see people with bicycles, and I often wonder, maybe we could do something to encourage people or safety of those people.
Maybe off Main Street, so a loop somewhere else, you know, by the library or something, so they come back to where they, not back and forth on 50 curb cuts.
But they,
Just makes no sense.
drive down, if you see them, they drive down Main Street and they go all the way down. They go down past the church, down past the restaurant, they go all the way down
And then they come
on
back.
their bicycle.
I think there are different types of bike riders in the town.
Recreational bike
There
riders.
are people who are going out for a 20-mile.
Yes.
Those are road
Cyclists
warriors.
who are going out
That's
for
a different group.
20-mile ride, and they're going to Middlebury, and I know that loop, and they go up to Quasi and they come back. And it's gotten too dangerous because people are too distracted on their, so unless you're an experienced cyclist, you've really gotta be careful. But then there are people who would love to be able to do their errands and just get a quart of milk and bike down and bike home safely, and they're not gonna have 8 bags of shopping to do, they just wanna run a couple of errands. And the town is not promoting that, and the message from a lot of people is, it's not safe, don't do it. When I'm sure there are lots of parents who would love to send their kids biking to middle school, you know, but they can't, because the message is, it's not safe, don't do it. So,
what do you think
There
that's-
are,
Busy over there.
I can assure you there are ways, if you wanted, there are ways to do it. We've done hundreds of miles of these things.
Yeah.
And in different areas. On street, you know, on street, dangerous. Dedicated path, a little less dangerous. Multi-use path, safe. And so there, you know, where are they? What should we be doing?
I think you should keep it in there, and if nobody checks it, you'll find out that there's no need for it, and just move on.
Right.
well, and I think our other challenge is we have state roads that feed into Main Street, and there's nothing we can do about those.
Everyone will
So if you
check it.
live anywhere off of Kettletown, if you live anywhere, you know, off of 188, you can't
Even if it's checked,
get
the
there,
town's not gonna do it. It's
Safe.
expensive.
and that's a problem.
We've got one going in Kent on Route 7. Hasn't been constructed yet, but think about that.
Interesting.
So it can be done.
So I did hear sidewalks mentioned, and that it's been, not that it's been done, but that the town has invested a lot into them recently. So perhaps something that we can do to maybe rephrase or expand the transportation section is not necessarily ask if the town should construct more, but ask people to rate the quality of it. So are the sidewalk connections adequate? Are there enough? And that can also go for bike lanes and the roads themselves. Do the roads need repaving, that kind of thing.
There's also information in town hall about that too, in the next, you know, they have a plan for the next
Oh,
one to go to the
absolutely.
library, so
But
that,
yeah, the
People
public
don't know about
perception
it, yeah.
versus what the town is actually doing.
yeah.
There could be a
We
wide
just
gap.
did the pedestrian
Yeah.
safety study,
Mhm.
and I don't, I might be wrong, but did we ever make a final recommendation
No,
to the board?
no.
I know the board took the plan and
That was the
tried to
intersection
get
study
some
that was just done.
funding for different grants
I
and
believe
whatever.
Yeah,
I
they
think
still
COVID got in the
are,
way.
yeah,
COVID got
they
in the
still
way.
are
It's
trying to,
just
sitting on the shelf.
there was a grant that they were
It's
applying
just sitting on the
for.
shelf.
Yeah, just
Nothing
one
happened.
little.
There was a grant they applied for, and then COVID got in the way, and there was
Yeah.
a whole.
There's
There's
I
another
really-
one.
We did that study
Kind
too.
of
Yeah,
off
you
topic, not off topic, but we really need to
Yeah,
take that.
we mentioned
You
that.
guys put a lot of work into that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we mentioned that at our last meeting, we mentioned that.
So we've gotta actually make that recommendation.
Yeah.
We make the application for funding though, with the strategic plan. You
Yeah,
made-
something, I
You
forget.
made the application, we didn't, they only chose what they
And the
wanted
board
to
must have seen it,
choose.
because, I know, or at least I think I know,
Neil did
that
this.
there was a recommendation to fund the sidewalk that was recommended from Main Street through to the
Yeah,
library.
that got
Mhm.
denied.
So somebody had to have seen it.
Oh, no, we had multiple meetings.
Yeah.
Strategic
Yeah, but
plan,
now they're
Nothing was
putting in a
Yeah,
PDD.
yeah, that got denied, right?
Ron, the
No.
strategic
Well,
plan.
That section they're talking
sent
about?
the
Sure it was.
application to
The
the
I don't
sidewalk.
know about that,
So we
but I
have
know
nothing
that
to do
they're
with it.
putting in
We don't
a
know how
section of
that got
sidewalk
done.
walk that's contingent with the PDD.
Yeah.
And it was the strategic planning commission. Yeah,
They don't send anything, they only recommend.
They did fill out the application for funding for that particular, from all our study, just what, that particular thing, they were denied.
I don't think it was a strategic
No.
planning commission. I believe that came from the selectman's office.
They come from,
Yeah.
I'm on strategic planning, and I can come to you, it did not come from there.
Yeah, they came from the first selectman's office.
Yeah, and they're applying, they're in the middle of
Yeah.
applying for another one, I believe.
Does anybody see anything on this that they don't like of questions that we should just
Yeah.
eliminate outright?
So I don't understand the question if the town should create improved road connections.
Where are you?
And that's number
Transportation?
42, I don't know what we're asking there,
Yeah, that's confusing.
and I don't know what we would do
Um,
with the feedback if we got it, so.
Okay, I can, not looking at the plan, but I think what that is concerned with, there are certain corridors that you have that you can't get from one side of town to the other without going up to Woodbury, so.
Right.
And should you be creating other corridors that link the various neighborhoods and sections of town where they're absent? You know, so, for example, my perception out of towner is you got the whole, South Britain going up into the northwest corner.
Yeah.
You can't get there from here, so to speak. If you're over here, you can't, how do you get there? Part of it is you can't cross the floodplain, you know, but that's what they were driving at, there. Should there be other corridors created to facilitate movement,
Yeah, I agree.
within the town?
So,
We
So
can get rid of that
rephrase
question.
To cross
we can
down.
either rephrase it, I don't know that it's a priority.
Yeah, I
We
think
should
that
cross
was,
it off,
Right.
right? Everyone agree?
No, we
Yeah.
got rid of one.
Yeah.
See, we're making it shorter.
Who wants to do it first?
That must have been a planning commission issue at some point, 10 years ago.
It was, yeah, I remember that, it was. There was.
I'd also, like to, maybe ask about, mixed-use housing.
Tell me what you mean by mixed-use housing?
Well, so I would think that, new retail development with apartment space.
Like the quarry,
Yep.
thing in Hudson.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
I know what, I
Yeah.
had my perception, but I
Yeah.
wanted to understand, because people don't
And
use that loosely.
more housing that's accessible to the main,
It's mixed use.
to Main Street.
Mhm.
I would also think that that's,
It should be encouraged, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's retail development, it should be encouraged, whether it's a dentist's office, you put something upstairs.
We have some, yeah.
Yeah, I
we
know
have some,
we do,
but
we should
I just
encourage
wonder
more.
if we
I agree.
want to ask if that should be encouraged.
We should encourage more.
When you ask that question and you get the answer back, think about what the change, is that a change in the character of your town that you want?
No, because it exists right now.
Where?
Movie theater.
Garage
Movie theater,
road.
Actually,
apartments.
we denied that application.
No,
so-
no,
But-
mixed use I'm
They
talking
did the
about.
variances
You
they
ha-
wanted, but that had an apartment above it, nobody seemed to have an issue.
Yeah.
So it
Which
does
I
exist.
mean, and would.
It's limited,
would
it's very
possibly
limited.
meet
Yeah.
some
Down Main
affordable
Street,
housing
you'll see-
issues as well.
Retail, you'll see dentist's office, and et cetera,
Yeah,
downstairs,
yeah.
and you'll see apartments upstairs.
but there's not very many of,
Less than a dozen.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
less than a
both.
dozen.
Small amount.
I think you're saying how would that
I would
impact the
encourage
character?
more. Oh, absolutely.
It's
I would do-
accepted
I'm happy to
and
hear that from you.
reflected
Because, well,
We suggested it when they just did Chatfield's.
Yeah.
And they didn't wanna be
But
interested.
again, if we get positive feedback and then we can put it in the plan of conservation development, we can push for that to be included.
I'm all for it.
Yes.
Any way we can encourage it,
Because of what the town is,
Mhm.
okay? If you wanted to, if you didn't have a car, and I find that very hard to believe that if somebody wouldn't have a car, but if you didn't have a car, or you didn't want to drive your car as much, the ideal place for you to be is either on Main Street North or Main Street South, because there you're within walking distance of everything, you know, and that's the kind of character you wanna build in the town of Southbury. You want it to become a walking town.
Ah, there you go. Yeah,
And I'm all for you, I agree with everything you're saying. What I hear though is, we're starting to direct already.
Um,
We need to be doing this, we need to be doing this, and
no, we got a qualifier, yeah.
Yeah, we've gotta make sure that this is what the town wants, not what
Yeah.
this room wants.
I certainly appreciate that, I just,
But let's ask the question.
but
Right,
I'd like to
absolutely.
get that question.
We have to ask the question,
As
we'll
well.
find out the answer,
We were
absolutely.
also told by, I don't know whether it was Kevin or somebody, a
We're gonna
couple
need to
years ago,
define just
that
one.
millennials and,
Yeah.
young
That's where they wanna
people
live.
want to be in a walkable community, right? And so, how do we get,
I
if
agree.
we
How do
want
how do
younger
we make it more
population, how do we
walkable?
do that?
I live in Heritage Village. If you, at any particular point in time, if you're in Heritage Village, you'll see people walking all over the village. I walk myself.
I see you all the time.
But it's, the doctors recommend it, the people like to do it, it gives them an opportunity to get out. And I think we should encourage, and I don't know how you would phrase it in the question, I can't see people saying, no, you don't want it. But you should encourage Southbury to become a walkable town. That's why we built the sidewalks, you know what I'm saying, we should have
Yeah.
more of that.
Save all these conclusions, after you get the data.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
and Ken.
You're right, I agree
we talked about
100% with you.
Open-ended questions, not wanting too many of those, but, could there be something about that, like
Yeah,
what would
absolutely.
make it a more
Would you
walkable
like-
community, or?
I don't know how you would phrase it.
Well, first of all, when it comes to mixed use, we're gonna have to define it for people, because it takes on a life of its own unless you say what it is. That's why I asked you what and I agree with your interpretation, other people may not understand that.
But I think this is a good segue for, 34 through 36, about maybe leading the witness a little bit. Well, I don't think these are egregious at all, but are these still things that are main tenets you wanna ask about? So limiting commercial development to where it's currently allowed, not expanding those zones, or not creating a mixed-use area. Same thing with light industrial manufacturing.
I thought those were leading. I
Yeah.
thought the way they're, I was, actually, I was looked, that was what I was gonna say. I think 34, 35, and 36, but 34 and 45 explicitly, by making the question limit,
Limit, yeah.
immediately is leading the question, person down the road, because they're receiving this from the town.
Right.
So it's as if the town's saying, we think you should limit these, what do you think? You know, it's a little, it's not open-ended, it's a little guiding to me.
So you wanna say limit or expand?
I don't know, I'd wanna,
No,
but this
no,
all
no,
falls
no.
into.
It is, the question, the lead-in is the town should,
Yeah.
isn't the question.
Right.
Would you
Well,
prefer if the town?
Or couldn't it be, I mean,
Encourage.
instead of the town should, isn't it commercial development is adequate where it is currently allowed? And then light industrial manufacturing development is adequate to where it is currently allowed?
That's what I mean.
Yes.
Or there could be sub-questions to the same thing, under the heading.
Yeah, the town should is
I
saying,
don't think she's saying
that's the part that to me
encourage is
is leading,
acceptable
because of what it says,
as it is.
the town should limit.
But if you remember, 10 years ago, that was an issue. It may still be an issue, but that was an issue before the commission as to the expansion. That's when you were beginning to talk about Southbury
But
Training
we should have
School and
something
so
about
on.
the library, I'm just not
That's
sure.
why we
We're not gonna change
encouraged
No,
or
you're right, yeah, you're right.
gave credence to
Bank.
us being a sewer avoidance community.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, to me, is a topic, I'm gonna throw it out in a different way. And I mentioned it before about community sewage disposal system. You are a sewer avoidance town.
Yes.
Do you want to examine that any farther? Because in order to accomplish the meaningful, multi-use housing, for example,
Yes.
meaningful cluster housing, meaningful density to create, instead of a town center that is very linear, because it follows Route 6,
Yeah.
and you've got limited space, there aren't a whole bunch of nodes there, clusters, as distinct from Heritage Village, which is a real cluster. Do you want to get at that question of continued sewer avoidance? Not talking about public sanitary sewer systems such as Heritage Village, but other types of systems. If you do, then we need to ask that question.
Well,
Because you're not going to get higher densities in a village setting without
Yeah.
some sort of
If you
system.
want downtown Southbury to be a walkable, thriving place for, younger people to
We need a
to
sewer
live,
entry
you're gonna have to make some meaningful housing units,
in and around Main Street.
not 5 or 10 more above shops. I mean, you're gonna need a complex, and I'm not saying complex meaning up high.
No.
No, it could be small clusters,
But if it's a cluster, then you're going to need something like
Yes.
the Green put in.
But they're
These
not-
little mini
it's still
sewer,
possible, there's engineered systems that accommodate that. You don't have to, once you have sewer, you don't
I'm not
limit
talking
it.
I'm not,
public sewer.
I am not in any way encouraging or
I'm not
even
saying
talking about a
connecting to
sanitary
our-
sewer system. You're not gonna get one.
No,
No, I'm talking about what the Green did.
if you're gonna encourage cluster housing, you're gonna have to have some kind of constructed
System.
sewage system. You're
Yep.
gonna have to.
Yep.
You also need to talk,
Had the space to do it.
the economic development
The
director's
state-
gonna say, yes, we should be
state
putting sewer
frowns
on Main
that.
Street,
They really do,
period.
having a separate sewer system, separate community sewer system, independent. Already it's possible with cluster housing. You have engineered systems that are possible,
If you talk to your, regional health district guy,
yes.
he'll slit your throat when you talk like that.
Sure.
No, I don't think so.
I've had this discussion with him.
The new guy?
Neil Lustig?
Now he's
He's
out.
on suspension.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so maybe you will have a different discussion. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
The point that I'm making is, that yes, there are technologies,
Yes.
but are they something that you want to pursue? Because there is an obligation as part of the town in doing those, to take them over in the event of failure.
But also, I've had conversations with Kevin Bielmeyer that he'd like to, I certainly think he'd wanna hear from the town about, we've talked for years, in the 12 years I've been here, about Main Street about sewer for Main Street, just for Main Street, to help support economic development and potential residential development on Main Street, if we're looking at mixed use type of.
Yeah, like with the Route 1, it just doesn't, it's not our character, it's not our.
But that's your opinion, and that's what we can't be doing here, we need to hear from the town. And that's, that to me is, I don't know, I don't necessarily disagree with that, by the way, but I think that
So is it appropriate?
that's the
Planning
point.
commission does help define that. That's why we have a planning commission.
Right.
And so, I'm always up for all of our discussions and really trying to expand, challenge my thinking and stuff, but I do stand strong on our town character, and I think that, I think very critically about it. It's really important, and you look at, I spent, not a tremendous amount of time, but I did read the POCD, I've gone through it a few times. And it's been really clear through all the people that I've met in this town, that keeping this town's character is extremely important to many people in this town, the majority of people in this town. So I love the idea, in my head I battle with the idea of, wow, imagine a Main Street that has like a bustling community, young
Whoa,
people
whoa,
walking.
we're not saying bustling, we're
Well-
just saying
So is
we
it a
don't have to
matter
go to
of-
bustling,
So-
if that's gonna
envisioning-
scare people.
Planning for something that's gonna develop.
So-
just say,
So I think,
It's important to preserve the character, is what
I
I'm
don't
getting
think,
at.
I don't think public sewer means, 4,000 people are gonna live on Main Street, like, I think,
Change the character.
Can't limit it then.
so I think
why,
There's nowhere to develop.
if I hear, I'm hearing
This is a moot point.
this as one of the,
What do you think?
topics
There's
perhaps
one lot.
for the focus groups.
Yes.
And coming in, I mentioned to Liz, I said, I think that's about time
There
Southbury
really
looked
isn't
at
a lot of
that.
space to do it on, so we shouldn't burn a lot of time on it, because
Okay.
we're, right, there's not a lot of land to do this, so we should just,
I do just wanna follow up then,
Yeah.
what would we ask? Because if we're
Uh,
in keeping with wondering what the,
In the immediate
Public lot.
survey, I think we might want to try to tailor questions, not do you like Main Street or not, but to try to focus on the character of the perception of Main Street. What do people think, and what would they want it to be if they were king or queen? and I don't know what those questions are, but Liz, we can generate those. Let's talk about a whole heading, Main Street, and we might wanna define what that is, because I think in an outside perception, Main Street, to me, ends as you turn around the corner and you get to Heritage Road? At that traffic light. Beyond that, that's a different Main Street,
Yeah, I think that's about right.
you know? So I'm wondering if we can focus something on getting people's understanding of what do they think?
Yeah.
What do they think? What should it be? You've had a lot of change in recent years, Chatfields, you know, the old market is, whatever it is now,
Kind of fitness.
yeah.
Yep, I mean, we're talking about also, that's going left off of, if you go off of Main Street, making a left towards Hedgewood, we've been talking for a long time about, if you make that right turn and that piece of land, before community on the right, on the back end of the transfer station, that piece of property.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
potential development of Main Street,
Right.
sort of.
I'm not saying it's right or
Yeah.
wrong, but if you go back to Dolores's day, I had a lengthy discussion with her about this.
Yeah.
Her philosophy was, let's build out Main Street to the point where it can't be built anymore. Then we'll start thinking about going down 67 or worrying about our Southford district or our Strongtown Road district, so that we don't have these little hot pots of
Yes.
development here and there. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, just
That was her
It makes
point.
sense.
Yeah, it does.
You know, if my wife and I wanna go someplace and just walk to a community, like this past Sunday, we were up in Litchfield, and we were walking through Litchfield. Now, that has a limited downtown, but it has a walkable downtown with restaurants right off the sidewalk. If you wanna go to one of our restaurants, you gotta go into something.
That's right. I don't know, I think if you're walking our Main Street,
Yeah.
any restaurant on Main Street, you can walk to. I mean,
Exactly.
I'm trying to think of the farthest one away.
Of course you do. It isn't,
In Richmond,
Sure,
you still have to
redeveloping
drive
everything,
there
I don't
and
know
then
how you-
walk.
I don't know either.
So, I think I'm getting where you're going with this, but so I pulled up what Bethel did for their downtown, they had a specific section for that, that I think may be able to kind of clarify where this could go. So I'm just gonna read you off some of their questions. Would you agree or disagree, about this statement about downtown Bethel? So it's the same kind of structure that you have. There's a good mix of shops, restaurants, offices, and amenities. It is thriving, it's visually attractive. I feel safe walking there. The sidewalks are properly separated from traffic. It's easy to cross the street. Parking is easy. The buildings feel like the appropriate size for the setting. So those kind of things we can dig into the Main Street.
yes.
They're character
It's
questions
their
without using the word character.
questions, Exactly.
Yeah.
And seeing what people like and don't like, so we can adapt this for Main Street, and I think that will capture a lot of what we've been discussing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what would you like to see?
Yes, are there amenities missing?
Because that leads, you're right, and I think that's smart, because that leads to the question of the need. Based on those responses, it's sort of the next step, the next phase
Yeah,
of
that's
the
what we're
need
trying to get.
for a potential center on Main Street, for example, just
Yeah.
based on those responses.
Right.
Yeah, that's right, that makes sense.
Is there any other big hot topics that anybody can think of that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, are we gonna? Only what I mentioned before, the electric car market, that's something that we have to be concerned about. for
The
sure.
what?
The EV market, when electric
We're-
cars in the next 10 years.
Charging
And
stations.
having
By the
the
time we do this
infrastructure.
again, next year Ford releases their truck and Romeo does and Lucid Motors and all these,
90% of the
GM will have
vehicles that are gonna be sold.
50% of the cars sold will be electric by 2030 at the latest, maybe
So that gets in.
2025.
So
That
the
gets
town
into-
having the infrastructure to support.
Yeah, so that gets into sustainability.
Right, we have to plan on that.
Other than that, my only comment is, this is the first I've seen of these questions. I'd really like to go home and
Please.
I thought I emailed
Digest.
this to
We
everybody.
didn't, you guys didn't get this by email?
No, I didn't get it.
No,
Oh.
I didn't get them
I
either.
guess I only sent it to you.
So I'd like to
Yeah.
digest these a little bit, and if we could get Bethel's forwarded to us.
Absolutely.
Oh,
That would
do we
be-
have others that we could do?
Oh, yeah.
We'll send a few, if you'd like, we can
Yeah.
send a few
More
out.
the merrier.
Yeah,
I'd
I
really
agree.
like
Yeah, we'll be happy to do that. That's easy.
In Woodbury,
And Woodbury?
they just finished, yeah.
Okay.
And it had a
All right.
huge response too. And we did last time too, we had like 80% or
really high.
I don't know how you get that, but
Yeah, we had a good turnout.
it's great.
I can see these questions, opening Pandora's box, you know, go back to this ugly subject of, you know, sewers. You have to be very careful how you word it, because, you know, would you, you know, I know it can't be worded this way, but, you know, would you, support a sewer system on Main Street if it provided mixed-use housing or something along that lines? And it's very easy from a resident to go, well, yeah, you know, I want that, because I want mixed-use housing. But there's a lot of regulations and a lot of things to get from point A to point B.
And you have to do worst case, we must do worst case scenario, that's what we're governed to do, that's our.
So I don't wanna lead people down a path that's either can't be fulfilled, or they're not getting all the information, so to speak, to think about.
Yeah. Let me, I can bring up, and I hope I don't offend anybody or open old wounds, but maybe about 10 years ago, in a prior administration, and I was president of Pomperaug River, or chairman of the board of Pomperaug River for about 3 years. And one of the questions that was being asked of Pomperaug River was, can you find us, is there enough pollution going on in existing uses because of the nature of the sands and gravels to justify our sewer system? Wow. Wow. And the answer to that is no. But that wasn't an acceptable answer.
Right.
So, you know, we have to be cognizant of, if you did have something like that, and that was the only method of solving the problem, that's different from introducing a sewer system if there another way of getting at it. I've always hated the term sewer avoidance, because that connotes a reluctance of creating a density and relying strictly on on-site subsurface sewage disposals on an individual basis.
That's exactly what it is.
Yes, it is.
It
Turns
has,
businesses
it
away.
has helped to maintain the character of Southbury, though, absolutely.
That's why you can't compare it with
Right.
the affordable house.
Kevin would say it's also a reason why, you know,
We don't have
businesses
housing that people can
historically
afford. Yeah. Right.
Can I just ask for the process, is the survey going to drive what the focus groups end up being?
Not necessarily. That would be more what we hear from you and from town staff, and what they would like to know more about. But if there's a theme that comes through, we'll definitely bring that to you and say, do you want us to hold a focus group about this? But we're not making any decisions without talking to you all.
Cool.
And before we wrap up, because it feels like we're closing a little bit, for your general demographics at the end,
Yep, I was just reading that.
yeah, are there any other questions you wanna ask about? When we're cross-tabulating the data, are there groups of folks that you, wanna look at, say, do they have school-aged children or something like that, that may make their, answers unique? So you have the age groups, so that would, if there are folks who are really interested in a senior center or housing, age-restricted housing, we can isolate those answers, that kind of thing. So we don't have to go through this now, but it's just something to think about, if there are other groups that you'd like to hear from or know the source of these responses from.
when you send the group some of the other surveys, I think it'll be interesting to see what other towns ask
Yeah.
to that regard in terms of demographics.
I just look,
Salary, question, the annual income is interesting, because
Yeah.
it's a huge spread.
Yeah,
You
we
know,
typically
somebody that
don't
makes
ask that.
$50,000 a year versus somebody that makes $100,000 a year, it's a decent spread, but yet they're in the same category.
Right,
Yeah.
plus greater than
Do we
200,000,
wanna
I
break
think that
those?
number's.
I would think you'd wanna
We'll change that.
somehow,
That's a good idea.
shrink those up a little bit.
50 to 80.
Make it 200, make it 300 or 400, it's towns that got a lot more than $200,000 income.
Oh, yeah, 200.
200, yeah.
Did you say that's not usually a question that's asked?
We typically don't ask income, because we can get that from the census,
Yeah.
and,
And we just got that.
Yeah.
Maybe that
so
should be
while
removed?
we
Okay.
wouldn't be
I don't know.
cross-tabulating the answers, answers. We haven't found that it's a super helpful metric of people's opinions, but if you
I
guys
can
think,
see that.
if you guys think
I
that
can
that's
also see where it
something-
would offend people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't think of that, you're right.
it's commonly skipped if we do include it.
Okay, I can see where it gets pulled up then. If we have the information available to us in another means.
Are we gonna have that
It's
by
just if we
in
wanna
time?
correlate it to their answers.
Right, if you wanna
Right.
correlate it to their answer.
Does it matter?
I'm fine with leaving it off
Right,
if everybody else, it doesn't matter to
Right,
me.
people who are
So-
making $200,000 or more don't want a pool versus, you know, people who are making,
Right.
right? I mean, that may
Yeah.
be informative.
But what do we do with that?
Well, I mean, you
Really?
could
Right.
extrapolate from
Right.
that, like, oh, they probably own pools themselves,
And then-
or, you know.
and those people who tend to skew the answer about the community pool one way or another. So you gotta know, at least have an idea of the people that are responding and the method or the reason for them responding.
Do we have a thing on recreation?
But it may not,
facilities
I
in
mean,
here?
it may not
It may not
inform the
correlate,
other
I don't
things
know.
that we wanna know, I'm just putting it out there as a, like,
We can leave it off if everyone decides it's fine with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
look at what our questions are, I guess, or other questions.
Yeah. In your last one, I didn't, I could be wrong, I didn't see anything about, recreation facilities.
Under,
Is that some,
we have it under,
Community
community
facilities.
facilities. Well, while we're on that one, we gotta change number 40, the town's library is adequate. We should, that's the question, I mean, it's definitely adequate. We gotta definitely change that question, cause we spent $7 million on
Yeah.
our library.
Yeah.
And there's no need to do,
I
as far as
think
I'm
this
concerned.
would be
anything
more of
else.
a rating the quality of.
Right, we gotta just change the wording of that question there
Yeah.
for something different.
Like I said, it's difficult for me to.
People are like, yeah, let's build another one.
Think about all these things, I'd like to go home
Yeah,
and, no,
Yeah.
digest it,
I
that's all.
yeah, look, then, if you don't mind, the recreation facilities adequate, that's, what type of recreation facilities?
Yeah.
You know,
So, yeah, we'll definitely send you some examples that are definitely a lot longer, but still have that kind of easy checkbox format.
I think too, like senior services should get drilled up a little bit more because, largest elderly community in the state,
Mhm.
and I think that facility is woefully lacking.
this isn't actually that long of a survey, so we can actually get another page and it'll be okay. I don't think it's that bad when you're buzzing through the boxes quickly, it's not too bad.
Yeah, you're right.
Can I just share something that's been rattling in my head the whole evening, and I don't even know, I just want everybody's opinion, actually. I'm looking at the energy section, and I started thinking about hot topic items and light and power in this town. And I think it only becomes an issue when we have a 6-day power outage, and then the whole issue of trees, and should they be cut back, and it's making my neighborhood look awful, and they cut my trees, but I hate having no power. Is there something in the world of development that there's a question that should be asked? I don't know.
Well, I think what you're getting,
Underground power
yeah,
lines.
that's exactly
But-
what I was
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm getting at. I don't know, I know this was probably old figures and it's probably more now, but I know that it's on average $1 million a mile.
That's
for
low.
every cable.
That's low.
So,
You're in the sort of the ballpark, but it's low.
yeah, that's an old number that I heard, I know.
Yeah,
But with new
Unfortunately, we've got them very.
subdivisions, yeah, they're buried in my neighborhood too,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
possible.
it,
Then have the contractor do it, so,
yeah, but the part that you're referring to is if, when we're working in downtowns, people always say, can't we get rid of those ugly power lines in the downtown? Sure. Figure another way to do it, and you will tell you,
Hey,
or
can you imagine one of
Eversource,
the taxpayers and say,
Pardon?
Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer, we're gonna spend $1 million a mile, what do you think, right?
yeah, right.
That's gonna go over well.
Happened in my old town in Port Washington on the North Shore, Long Island,
Yeah.
and that went to a referendum, the town voted down, so what did the power company do? They put in these gigantic, poles, the high power poles, that go from the Long Island Expressway all the way down the main strip into Port Washington. People
There-
went crazy.
What we were looking at when we did the downtown Torrington plan is to relocate. Main Street they're already buried from years ago, but some of the side streets, we were looking at relocating the overhead lines to the back. and feed from the back, so you didn't see them on the street. And that's an alternative, but you don't have depth, you got one street.
Yeah, we don't have that, yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have that problem.
All right, so we're all gonna look these over and then come back.
And we'll send you
with,
others, and then, and when is your next regular meeting?
Next month, September.
22nd.
Well, I think that's too long to wait. So Jessica, so if we send these to, maybe you can.
Yeah, I will
you collectively
contact-
can say, can we get these back in a week?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll send stuff to you in the next day or so.
Yeah,
You distribute and say, hey, just markups are fine, we can figure it out from there.
yes,
Just scan them.
okay, that works. And I apologize, I really thought I sent those survey questions out, I
So you're gonna have one from every one of us.
apologize.
Perfect.
So
Yeah, that's fine.
Everyone put your name on it, so we have an idea. On the page.
And your age and your income.
There you go, right?
Well, thank
And
you so
then-
much for your time.
Do we need to have another special meeting,
I think we're gonna have to, right?
before the next monthly meeting?
Before the next meeting of the 17th. Was it
So should we
27th, the
discuss
next
that
meeting?
now?
I think it's the 22nd.
So we need to probably put one on prior to that, right?
21st,
What is first is?
We don't need to do that.
correct.
So what works for everybody?
Labor Day's in there. Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, I think it's the sixth, so, and I don't know what the availability of the
One of the
rooms
illustrations of
are.
That's
residential
another
chemicals.
issue.
Yeah, that's
Not
true,
worried about
that's
that.
true.
Yeah, there aren't that many of us, it's
I
fine.
saw it, I said,
What do you guys think about, Wednesday, the 15th?
Oh. That's fine. Do we wanna
Tax
do
day.
earlier?
Earlier in the evening?
No, well,
Oh, and the,
but
Earlier in the month?
earlier in the month?
I was,
I,
if I could be aggressive and just say, why don't we meet in 2 weeks?
I agree.
What, the 8th?
31st?
we have,
Oh.
zoning that night.
The
That's
31st?
actually the public hearing. I have to be at that one.
That's cool.
How about
What about the
Thursday?
first week?
How about Thursday?
Thursday the 9th?
Thursday the second.
Thursday the 2nd?
Thursday the ninth or Thursday the second?
Thursday the 2nd works?
I won't be here.
When?
The ninth.
Well, second.
I can do it.
That work?
I think so.
Are there Board of, when's the Board of
It's a
Selectmen
meeting, yeah.
meeting?
That night?
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Doesn't affect us.
Doesn't do it anyway.
So we can still do it. We can
Yeah,
go
of course you
into
guys can still do it.
208 or
Yeah.
201 or.
Yeah, we'll just pick a different room. So the 2nd. Do we have to make a motion for this?
Absolutely.
We do?
No, you should do it. You can get the room, just.
Oh. I just said, do we have to make a motion?
No.
I go, absolutely. I'm like, okay.
No, no.
That was fast.
No, I mean, you don't need I don't think you need.
I don't think we need one. Yeah, I don't think we need one.
I'll give you one if you
Yeah.
want one.
Is
Yeah.
7 o'clock okay?
7 o'clock, guys, or wanna go earlier, or?
But I can do earlier if that's more.
I can do
convenient
earlier,
for other
too.
people.
You know, I think we need to check the availability of that room. I can imagine
Alright, let's say 7 for the moment. If we can get it earlier, we'll do that. Okay?
if that works.
As early
Deb,
as-
are you
yeah.
okay with that?
Deb, you okay with that?
6 would be fine.
6 I can do.
Yeah.
6 would be ideal.
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll come in.
Alright. Okay, so September the 2nd, tentatively 6 o'clock at the moment. That works for everybody?
And
And then, let's see, today is the, what, 17th? Right? So we can have all this information, everyone's questionnaires back to Jessica
back to Jessica, okay.
by, okay, Jess, all to you?
Yes.
You cool with that?
Mhm.
Okay. By next Tuesday, that work for everybody? By the 24th, the latest?
I think, let me give everybody.
You want it earlier than that, or that's good? A week is good, right?
A week should be
That
good.
gives us a week to compile it all.
Yeah,
I'll help you do it. Whatever you
Okay.
gotta do. Yeah, that gives us a week. That's cool, right?
that works.
Well, it's,
Are you just
oh,
gonna
it's your schedule.
scan
No,
them?
that
Okay.
that should be fine. I mean, all I'm doing is
That's what I was expecting.
reviewing them and
Yeah,
sending them.
so I'll just mark them up and drop them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine,
Works for
if
me.
you wanna do that. And
Yeah.
I'll give everybody extra copies.
We can email it to them.
I can
They
email it
print
out too, finally.
Yeah,
I'm good.
okay. So September 2nd it is.
Great.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Oh, wait, we can't yet.
we
Can't, we have one more thing to do.
You got one more thing.
Right.
Yep.
All right, thank you both. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank
You're
you. Very
welcome.
nice to meet
See
both
you
of you.
again.
And I love your mask matching your outfit.
Try.
Well done. Very stylish.
All right, 6 p.m.
Drive safe.
All right.
Take care.
right along. Other business appointment of John Allen to the Duck Valley Cog Liaison position. Everyone familiar with who John Allen is? I give a quick bio. John Allen and his family own John Allen's Plumbing in Oxford, Connecticut. And John's been in Southbury for, a long time. I've known him for my whole life. He's a great guy. Family's great. He's in plumbing and excavation. No, that's what they do for a living. So we figured he'd be an excellent candidate for this liaison. I talked to him about it. He liked the idea of doing it. They only meet, is it every other month?
I believe it's every other month.
Every other month,
August
so that was good for his schedule.
canceled.
Don Antillian had met with him and talked to him as well. Don's very close with him as well and recommended him too, highly to the town. We talked to Jeff about it too, and it seemed to be a good idea, so we brought it up to the commission to see if you folks would think it's a good idea to recommend him. Because we have to make that recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for him. So we have to just make a motion and read this, that hurt. All right, let's see. Memo to the Board of Selectmen, Southbury Planning Commission, August 18th, 2021, Naugatuck Valley Cog Liaison. At the meeting held August 17th, 2021, the Planning Commission voted to appoint Southbury resident John Allen to the representative to the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. Mr. Allen will be replacing the previous representative, Jay Caro, who stepped down. I'll make a motion for John.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
In the past, we've had an alternate also, if there's anyone else that would like to step up.
Yeah.
Ooh, it was tough enough getting.
Yeah.
But you can name the alternate down
I was
the
gonna
road.
say,
Fine one.
okay. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Perfect.
And the
So-
next meeting for the NVCOG Planning Commission is
October, I
October
mentioned that to
5th.
him. Yep.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah, but you emailed him that anyway, right?
Think so?
We'll double check it. We'll make sure we get it to him.
Yeah,
All right, perfect. Is this all we need now to go back to the board?
I believe so.
Okay, perfect. All right,
Thank you.
motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Here are
Opposed?
extra
Adjourned.
survey questions.
Oh, okay, I'll bring them.
Oh, if anybody
Oh,
wants
does anyone need
them.
them?
I also,
Yeah, I don't know, I'll email them once we get them done. Board doesn't need to see them now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just think like this group, once the Board of Selectmen sees these, they'll just wanna see what they were back then, just like we did now. But I'm, yeah. So these are the polls I was talking about, without any, right after